Hey guys, what is up? AwesomeTheSauce here. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day, and welcome. We're on Test Realm. We're finally doing the video that I've been hyping up. I'm hype about this. This is what I think is gonna be the tier list for Visionary PvP. Now, this is by far the hardest one, so if I'm wrong on this now, based on what I've done in Test Realm, I'll make another one in like a month or two, alright? Here are my honest opinions about the school rankings when it comes to Visionary PvP. Who's best, who's worse, who's the middle? Let's get right into it. Now, at the bottom of the list right now is, I think pretty squarely, it's gonna have to be Balance. I would argue that currently, right now, the only spell that Balance has that can even mildly keep it competitive are Supernovas, meaning Aura Pops. I have a feeling that if not for Aura Pops, like if you go against someone who doesn't have a Maycast Aura, most games are pretty much not as winnable as you would think, unless you just get very lucky. Why do I say this? Well, one, Gaze is doing a very, very small amount of damage. I still think that this, yes, there's a lot of utility in this spell, of course. However, unfortunately, Gaze is gonna be that big sore thumb when it comes to balance. It can be very good for dodging resist. There are reasons why Gaze is still very, very good. But at the end of the day, for something that used to do like over 1,000 damage and change the bubble, now Balance really just doesn't have anything like it anymore. Now, there are some good signs, I think. I think this spell, Spiritual Tribunal in Test Realm, this could be something that maybe opens up some doors, you know, but at the root of all of this is the fact that there are so many nerfs that Balance has gotten. Lore Master got nerfed. When Turn-Based came out, Mana Burn got nerfed quite hard. Diffuses used to basically only break one Dispel Shield every time they were cast, and now if you do 2 Diffuses in a row, 1 Dispel Shield accounts for all three Diffuses. And if we're going back even further, for longer games, even something like Reshuffle that Balance has as a spell, that also got nerfed, because now you have to pack multiple reshuffles. You can't just put one in and use it and then get all your enchanted cards back. For all of these reasons, Balance has, time after time, been going lower and lower. It started with the reshuffle nerf, but recently it looks like their damage output is just too low. During all of these nerfs, there was kind of a silver lining, and unfortunately, even that has gotten nerfed. Dark Nova used to be one of the best strategies for Balance. There's something really, really nice about the fact that a school with universal buffs can use a shadow hit. There's something that actually makes a lot of sense, and honestly, it was kind of a beautiful pairing in many ways. However, now, at the expense of 2 pips, your base damage on Nova is only 975, so even that is an extreme waste of pips. Now, if I had to give my unbiased feedback about Nova, as someone who has done the Nova strategy a lot, I think the real problem with designing Nova the way that it is right now is the fact that when you have 2 Shadow Pips, right, you can value it at, you know, 3 pips of Shadow Pip and say this should just do 6 pips of damage. But at the end of the day, that's not that accurate, because with 2 Shadow Pips, someone could just Shrike and then they could, you know, use, you know, a Shadow Enhanced hit. So in the case of a Storm, if they use a Shrike into a Rusalka, yes, there are 6 other pips attached, but at the end of the day, they're doing thousands and thousands and thousands more damage than Nova reflects. Basically, if you decide to choose Nova, anybody who is not gonna also Nova against you will just be using their Shadow Pips a lot more efficiently. I mean, the Gaze change and the Nova change are both pretty much death blows to Visionary Balance PvP in many ways. I really do hope they get another look at, for sure. But let's move on. I think number 6 is definitely much more up for debate than what I think is a very clear number 7 for Balance. Number 6 is definitely going to have to be Life. Now, here's the thing. I do think that Life is going to be a lot better in this meta than they were ever good in the last meta. Some of the most sizable buffs to Life is Scion of Life. I think this is actually very usable, especially if you're a tank Life and not a crit healing Life. This could really be it. Not to mention, Wings of Fate is a really, really good utility, especially for people who have crit. Like, if you crit a Wings of Fate, not only are you removing shields, not only can you defeat minions, you can also do a whopping heal. Now, this is all good, but at the end of the day, this doesn't really help as much against schools that can one-shot you. Now, the caveat with this prediction of mine is that I don't really know how Guardian is going to play into this meta. If I were to have 9,243 health, as much health as that is, I would be coming back with only about 1500 health. So yes, I could shield, and then I could try to Sathish, but at the end of the day, a 4-pip shadow hit can most probably one-shot you when you come back from a guardian. Life will be incredibly good against ice, because they can't heal that well. They'll be really, really good against balance, because balance doesn't have the damage output to one-shot. And they'll even be probably much better against schools like Myth, because Myth Scion got nerfed quite a bit too. But at the end of the day, that still leaves 3 other very offensive schools that can very easily one-shot them, and their mirror match, which is Life. And what Life will do is it'll most probably just end up in a stalemate. So it's almost like a 50-50 whether you're going to have an easy time or a hard time winning as a Life. And that is why it's so low on the list. Now, numbers 5 and 4 are, in my opinion, very, very interchangeable. So don't take the fact that I'm doing Fire first as too much of a thing. I don't honestly think that they're that different. I think Fire and Storm right now are very, very similar in how they're going to operate in PvP. I think both of them can run a very decent glass cannon kind of setup and just hope to overpower the enemy, or they can go the tank route and they'll be held back quite a bit by the fact that they're lower health. Now, the reason why I think Fire is just going to be a tad bit worse than Storm is just because the Ifrit nerf, and the Ifrit nerf is a really, really big deal. You're not going to be able to just trap stack and then just Ifrit into a Shad. It's just not going to work. People can kill you through this minus 45, and the damage on it is lower enough that it is gonna, you know, get in the way of combos like that. So I think Fire is gonna be kind of mid-tier. I mean, at the end of the day, they have a very, very nice trap stacking strategy. They can still have a Fire Beetle pet. If you can get a fuel into a TC fuel into a Fire Beetle, and then you combo off of Brim or something like that, you're still looking at a lot of damage opportunity. The only problem is, because they don't have a solid 2-shot like Storm does, that's why I'm putting them at number 5. But let's move on to Storm, and you'll see why they're very, very similar, but Storm is slightly ahead. Now, Storm and Fire are very similar in that they have low health and they struggle to heal. So those are things that hold them back quite a bit. But the reason why I think Storm is going to be slightly better than Fire in this meta is just because that their damage is a lot better. They can Stormlord into a Rusalka, and that is a very, very solid 2-shot. That with the amount of damage that Storm can put out, especially if you know, put up a Dark Wind or a Galvanic before, you're looking at a very, very solid hit. Not to mention Scion hits for an absolute unit of damage. Scion of Storm is not something that you can even think about tanking unless you're maybe an Ice. So for that reason alone, Storm is it just has more offensive ability. They're very, very similar, but because Storm actually just has better kill options, they're just going to be slightly better. Now, Myth, I think, got one of the biggest buffs that this school has ever seen. Yes, Orthers got removed, but the Mystic Colossus that they got in place of it is probably one of the hypest things ever. Something that removes a shield that hits is already going to be powerful, but with Myth specifically, no matter what set shield you put on yourself, a Myth set shield will get pierced. So for that reason alone, compared to the Live Realm version of Mystic, that is extremely good. Nobody was using this in PvP because shattering after you hit wasn't really that useful. Medusa got some damage nerfed off of it, but at the end of the day, you're not really using Medusa for that much other than the double stun. So stunning is still a capable strategy. And Scion, it got nerfed to the point where it might be just slightly harder to one-shot people, so people who heal might pose a little bit more of a problem. But at the end of the day, that situation isn't that different from someone who just set shields against a Scion in Live Realm anyway. So that is why Myth is so high up. They're not affected that much. Yaga didn't even get nerfed. This is a no-brainer. Let's move on to number 2. Ice has always been incredibly good in the meta, but they are number 2 in my opinion. I think they're number 2 in this meta. I think that Ice is number 2, mainly, I know this is like a crazy thing for them not to be number 1. I don't think that they're bad in any way imaginable. I just think that some of their really good tools are just weaker now. Scion just doesn't pack enough of a punch to just really one-shot with it, and it never really should have been like that. And now it has become a thing, and now it's been brought back to not a thing. So now that Scion isn't as good of an early pressuring tool, so, you know, opponents can actually save up the pips to actually, you know, weather you down, and because a bomb is a good bit weaker, even though it is still pretty powerful. Because those tools are a little bit weaker, and even Lord of Winter, also, you know, some of these very highly used ice spells got nerfed. Because of all of these things, ice is gonna be a harder to win kind of school than it used to be. That being said, stats that involve thousands and thousands of HP more than everybody, more than 120 damage very, very easily, 60 something resist, perfect pip chance, you know, like when you rock turquoise gear on an ice and you look at these stats, it's very hard to really argue that with some of the better gear that ice is really that bad. Now, why do I put Death at the very, very top of this whole thing? Now, there's a couple of reasons. One, Death got a huge buff with the way drains get enchanted now. So basically, if you have a ghoul and you put a 250 enchant on it, it will do the full 250. So if you put a 300 enchant on this, it'll do 460 damage with the drain. So the fact that drains are actually a very good heal is a very nice thing for Death. But also they have a solid counter against healing schools that are better now because of how Shadow Enhanced hits hit for less. So you can always have bubble control with Doom. And there are even spells like Vaughn that actually still hit for so much and also have an infection attached to it. These heal counters are wonderful, and the fact that drains are more powerful also allows them to be somewhat of a healer themselves. I think with fewer people being able to just spam shads and overwhelm opponents, I think setting up for a drain is going to be a very, very solid strategy, and the only reason why this puts them above Storm, Fire, Mitt, and Ice, the only reason why I put Death above all of those is because they also have a solid counter against people who try to heal back. So it is a combination of having very, very decent hits, having very decent combos, but really what it comes down to is that they really don't struggle to counter healers, and that puts them as a good matchup against literally every school right now. I think Death is the only school right now that you can comfortably go into PvP, and you can really get anybody, and it's gonna be a matchup that's not against you no matter what. I think it'll be either a fair game or you'll have an advantage. So that puts Death at a very commanding lead, in my opinion, compared to the mid-tier, I guess, and definitely Ballads in this meta. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what kind of strategies Death does. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this tier list. I didn't know that servers were going to go down for maintenance, so I've been trying to do this while I had this stupid little thing at the bottom right. I don't know if y'all noticed. You probably did. It was making me nervous, but we got the video out. I'm pretty excited to see all the PvP after Test Realm drops. I definitely think even though a couple of schools here and there did get left behind a little bit, I think school identity is definitely something you can feel a lot more when you're doing this, when you're doing PvP and Test Realm. And that is really exciting. So whether you like PvP or not, I think it's a great time to test it out, and I hope that, especially if your school that I ranked lower in the tier list, prove me wrong so I can make another video. I think that's a great goal. I will try to prove myself wrong on this. As always, y'all, drop a like if you enjoyed, leave a sub if you're new. There's tons of links in the description, including my Twitch, my Twitter, my Discord, my Instagram, and of course, my Patreon. Thank you for all the love on Patreon. And as always, if somebody hasn't told you you're awesome today, they doing something wrong, so stay awesome. And yeah, yo.